Hey, this is Ben with Feud Rewind with a quick word from our first unofficial sponsor. Water. You need some. I need some. We all need some. We're made of it. Guess what? It comes in a bunch of different varieties. Hot, cold, frozen. You can get it flavored. You can get it plain. With bubbles, no bubbles, out of your tap, out of a bottle, out of a box. The possibilities are endless. Regardless, you need some. Before we get started, go get a glass. I'm going to get one too. We'll meet back here and start the show. Thank you so much. Water.
February 8th, 1992 saw the airing of the WWE special Saturday Night's Main Event 30. The Lubbock Municipal Coliseum in Texas is packed to the rafters, and over 14 million are tuned in from their homes to see the blow-off to this very personal rivalry between two megastars. Jake the Snake Roberts has been a slithery thorn in the side of Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, and Macho is finally able to get his mitts on the contemptuous Roberts. How did Roberts become so vile? And how did Macho become so enraged? Okay, so Macho is just being macho. But how did we get here? Oh yeah. We gotta roll this back. Yeah, with a We gotta roll this back with a rewind. Welcome to the Feud Rewind. I'm your host, Benza Lance, and I apologize for my Macho Man Randy Savage impersonation. In the early 90s, the WWE was going through somewhat of a transition period. The quote golden era of the 1980s, which saw the WWE gobble up territorial talent almost at will in order to create their international behemoth promotion, was starting to see its popularity wane a little bit. Of course, if you look at any of the television ratings or the gate numbers from this time, the first few years of the last decade of the 20th century saw the WWE maintain their viewership, but the fans were starting to grow tired of the cartoony gimmicks and the characters, and were desperate to get something a little bit more real. While it would be a few years before more viscerally real talent, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, for example, would become the norm, there would be a feud in the early 90s that definitely have more of a place in the Attitude Era of the late 90s. Built upon darker psychology, a real-life relationship, and gruesome moments we hadn't seen before in a wrestling ring. The feud between Macho Man Randy Savage and Jake the Snake Roberts stands out as a pillar of the more modern style of storytelling that we love and appreciate nowadays. But first, a little foundation for our feud to build off of.
The cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
We all know Randy Savage, if for nothing else, than for his infamous, oh yeah, catchphrase. God, I should probably stop doing that. The Macho Man was born in 1952 in the cradle of the Midwest, Columbus, Ohio. An extremely gifted athlete, Savage was drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals of the MLB out of high school. Unfortunately for him, an injury to his throwing arm due to a collision at home plate derailed his baseball career in the minor leagues. Fortunately for wrestling fans, he decided to join the family business instead, as his father was the legendary wrestler Angelo Poffo. Young Randy went through a pretty intense body transformation. Due to his years as a baseball player, he had developed a sleek body compounded with fast-twitch muscles built for explosive lateral speed. For wrestling, he had to change his routine and bulk up considerably from his playing days, going from the mid 170 pounds to the lower to mid 220s in weight. Adding mass while keeping the majority of his quick athleticism made Savage stand out over time from most of his lumbering contemporaries. After a few years of learning the ropes and paying his dues, Randy's father Angelo opens International Championship Wrestling, feeling that his sons Randy and Lanny weren't getting their proper respect after a few years of cutting their teeth in the NWA-based promotions they were competing in. One of the most well-known outlaw promotions of the 1970s and 80s, Outlaw because they had no affiliation with the NWA, the governing body and council for professional wrestling at the time. International Championship Wrestling would grow into a cult-like status. ICW would disband and the Pofo Kids would join Jerry Lawler's Continental Wrestling Alliance, where Randy would quickly ascend the ranks to become one of the most talked about wrestlers on the circuit at the time. His notoriety was as such that the WWE came calling when Randy's contract was up, and in June 1985, the Macho Man would step through the doors of Titan Towers for the first time. Known for his flamboyant attire and high-energy in-ring style, Randy was quickly a fan favorite, displaying explosive athleticism and intense charisma. Being paired with America's sweetheart, Miss Elizabeth, Randy would have legendary feuds with Hulk Hogan and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, to name a few of the most well-known feuds, while also becoming the Macho King by winning the 1989 King of the Ring tournament. By 1991, Macho has been both the Intercontinental Champion and the World's Heavyweights Champion, and at WrestleMania 7 had put his career on the line against the Ultimate Warrior, in which Randy lost. Having retired from in-ring work, Randy had moved over to the commentary team and was completing his story of winning back Miss Elizabeth. This was culminating with Savage's proposal to Miss Elizabeth, and they were preparing to marry during SummerSlam. Before the wedding, it is a tradition that the men have a bachelor party, a stag do, whatever the term is in your area, for the groom to blow off some steam with his lads. That's what Randy is about to do. And well, there's one dude in particular that shows up that Randy and nobody else wants there. It just so happens to be the other man in our feud, Jake the Snake Roberts.
If you plant grass, you grow grass. If you plant rice, you grow rice. I plant fear, and fear will grow. Because if you have a man looking at you, and he has a little fear in his heart, where does that put him? But in the palm of your hand.
Jake Roberts was born in Gainesville, Texas in 1955. The son of wrestler Grizzly Smith, Jake would become a wrestler himself, starting in such famed promotions of yesteryear as Mid-South, Mid-Atlantic, and Georgia Championship Wrestling. The 6'6" Roberts definitely had the height to be a wrestler, but his body was definitely more of the, quote, everyman type. Going into the latter part of the 80s, we saw the rise of the bodybuilder types in the ring, and while Roberts was certainly fit, his physique was noticeably different to someone like Macho Man, for example. It would take a few years of seasoning in the aforementioned promotions as well as Stampede Wrestling in Calgary before Roberts would get a grasp on his character. But when he finally did, this was once again in stark contrast to most of what we saw on TV. The Snake, with his enigmatic personality and calculating demeanor, was a master of mind games. His promos were often delivered in a very controlled, almost hushed, breathy way, with a slow and calculated speech that made his words carry that much more weight. Together with his pet snake Damien, Roberts made his debut in the WWE in March of 1986, and quickly entered into a classic feud with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Roberts was eventually given his own talking segment called the Snake Pit. Like other classic segments in a similar vein such as Piper's Pit with Roddy Piper, this segment was used for Roberts to conduct interviews and further storylines. Roberts proved himself very well appointed on a microphone, and it was an ingenious move to give him his own segment. Roberts had a history of sorts with the fans, supporting him more than management at times. With both Georgia Championship and the WWE wanted him to be a heel, the fans just adored Jake and cheered for him almost at every opportunity. Unfortunately, stubbornness often prevailed, and instead of changing course and giving the fans what they actually wanted, possible planned pushes for Jake were usually derailed. Also, Damien the Snake would unfortunately meet his demise at the buttocks of Earthquake John Tenta, but fortunately his big brother Lucifer was able to take his place. In the summer of 1991, the Ultimate Warrior enlisted Jake's help in Warrior's feud with The Undertaker, Roberts turns heel and feeds Warrior to take her instead, with Roberts proclaiming, "I'm a snake. Never trust a snake." This was the first time that Roberts had been heel since 1987. This was also around the time that he showed up to Macho Man's bachelor party unannounced. The wedding for Macho and Elizabeth was taking place at the 1991 SummerSlam. Madison Square Garden was packed to the roof in wait for what Mean Gene had dubbed a match made in heaven. During the reception after a beautiful ceremony, two crashers appeared. Jake the Snake and his new pal The Undertaker. Jake proceeds to give Macho and Elizabeth his wedding present. A box with a venomous python that frightens Elizabeth upon her opening the box, while Undertaker blindsides Macho with his urn. Jake takes the python out to taunt Elizabeth, and eventually Jake and Taker are run off by Sid Justice. A distressed Elizabeth and a pissed off Macho stand in the ring, in the ruins of their special day. Our feud begins.
So foolish, walking into the pit, thinking that I was just going to sit back and take your crap one more time, man. What do you think you are? You ain't nothing special to me, man. You're a piece of flesh. When I step into the ring and I look at that man across the ring from me, I say, well, that's my dinner. That's my meal.
Typically, this should be a pretty straightforward situation where another person has stepped up to your woman, so now you go kick that person's ass. There is a slight problem, however. Macho is still retired. More concretely, we have a WWE president during this area, Jack Tunney, that is a real hard ass and won't reinstate Macho. Savage would start a public campaign to be reinstated, which largely was shot down by Tunney. Acutely aware that Savage could not issue him any type of receipt for his actions, Roberts himself would cut promos directed towards Savage, oftentimes berating and belittling him. The personal animosity between the two wrestlers was fueled by Roberts' desire to prove that Savage was not as honorable and loyal as he portrayed himself to be. They delivered intense and emotionally charged speeches, further deepening the animosity and creating a palpable sense of anticipation for their matches. Roberts targeted Miss Elizabeth, often making thinly veiled threats towards her, adding an emotional level and emotional element to their rivalry. This raised the stakes for Savage, who was determined to protect his wife's honor and seek revenge on Roberts. It wasn't until November 23rd on the WWE Superstars of Wrestling tapings did Savage return to the ring, but not in the capacity he attended. Roberts is in the ring and he's cutting a classic promo to try to goad Macho into coming down. After Macho Man is eventually lured into the ring, Roberts lays down the boots on him and attacks Savage, eventually tying Macho up in the ropes. Jake removes Lucifer from his bag, and Savage has no choice but to sit there and writhe in pain as the snake bites him into his arm.
He got it too close to him. Keep it away from it. The snake is trying. Wait a minute, the snake is running. Oh, the snake is fighting him. The snake is fighting him. I'm out of here. Roddy Piper on his way to get some help. The snake is gnawing on the arm of Randy Savage, who's helpless, tied in the rope. All I can say is that snake better be devenomized. It better be.
While the snake has been devenomized, as we, would learn years later, you have to remember that this is an actual fucking snake biting Randy in the arm. Real teeth. This adds a extra layer of danger and intensity to their feud, as the bite inflicted real pain, no shit, and further fueled the animosity between the two, especially since Savage still wasn't reinstated for in-ring work. That is, until this very brutal attack happened, as due to the overwhelming crowd support swelling beneath Savage, Tunney has no choice but to reinstate the Macho Man, and actually goes a step further and actually books a showdown between the two. The Tuesday night pay-per-view was an attempt to establish Tuesday as a secondary pay-per-view day. And this event takes place on December 3rd, 1991. The Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio is our battleground for this midweek evening. The featured bout on the undercard was the match between Savage and Roberts, and a special stipulation that President Tunney has added is all snakes are banned from ringside. Hey there, this is Benzo with Feud Rewind, coming at you with a quick word from our second unofficial sponsor, the sun. That's right, summertime is here, and the living, if your living is like mine, is extremely difficult. But what's not difficult is popping in your earbuds, putting on those headphones, using a little Bluetooth speaker, and going out into the sun while you listen to this podcast. You and me, let's go get some vitamin D while we enjoy the sun. Thank you, sun. Now back to the show.
Maybe you can tell me why I feel this way. Is it because Jack Tunney reinstated Randy Savage? No, that's not it. Is it because Jack Tunney has barred the snake from coming back to the ring? I can't take it down the aisle no more. Maybe that's it. So, Savage, I'll tell you something. You want to play something right, man? You want to play something real? Then you get real close and listen. You bring in Elizabeth to the ring to watch what you're going to do to me. Think about this. When you look down at your wife, after I've done what I'm going to do, what are you going to do? Wake her up. Princess, the glass slipper doesn't fit this time.
While Roberts was making his entrance, Savage rushed down the aisle and attacked Roberts from behind, attempting to get the drop on the snake, and being so emotionally charged that he simply couldn't wait. Savage spends the next couple of minutes on the offense until the referee steps in between the two competitors, which allows Roberts to deliver sort of a low blow. Roberts then tosses Savage over the top rope to the floor, giving him time to recover from the relentless attack that he just endured. Roberts would now take control of the match, focusing the majority of its punishment on Savage's injured arm, the same arm that was snake bit previously. At about the 6-minute mark of the match, Roberts grabbed Savage in preparation for his finishing move, the DDT, when Savage countered by driving Roberts backward into the corner, ramming his shoulder into Roberts' ribs. This caused Roberts to stumble out of the corner and fall to the mat in pain, allowing Savage to climb to the ropes and perform his diving elbow drop finisher and pin Roberts for the victory. After the match, Savage wanted to inflict more punishment on Roberts and grabbed a steel chair, but it was taken away by a ringside official. Savage then grabbed the timekeeping bell, but became kind of tug of war with the referee, which allowed Roberts to perform a DDT on Savage. Roberts would deliver then a second DDT to Savage. And then Roberts reached into the ring and pulled out a bag, similar to the one that normally contained his King Cobra. Miss Elizabeth then runs down to the rings and drapes herself over her husband, attempting to prevent Roberts from harming him any further.
Look at this! Jake the Snake taunting now! Oh, it's Elizabeth! Out of nowhere! You better get him out of there, Toots! Elizabeth covering her man! She's bleeding!
Come on, Jake! Stop it! Stop! Come on, Jake! He's got enough! Get out!
This doesn't work, however, as Roberts gets a hold of Savage and delivers a third DDT, following this up with a nice, healthy slap across Elizabeth's face. This singular moment is definitely the most heinous of our feud. Physicality with the female managers or valets is old hat for heels. However, Elizabeth was long put on a pedestal in a way. almost assuredly due to Savage's overly protective nature. Elizabeth was not to have hands put on her, and Roberts took this a step further by paintbrushing her clean across the face. At this moment, a second referee then arrived to help escort Roberts out of the ring. WWE President Jack Tunney finally comes to ringside to make sure Roberts left without any further incident. Now, Savage was never one to let this slide, and Roberts would spend the next few weeks always looking over his shoulder. A great example of this is our next pay-per-view event. And as the calendar year turns to 1992, we're traveling to beautiful Albany, New York for the Royal Rumble. Taking place on January 19th, 1992, this Rumble was notable as the Rumble winner usually is issued a World Heavyweight Championship shot at the following WrestleMania. Since Heavyweight Champion Hulk Hogan has been involved in some screwy matches with Undertaker, Hogan has been stripped of the title, and the Rumble winner will instead become the new Heavyweight Champion.
Royal Rumble, winner takes all. The World Wrestling Federation belt goes to the man that stays to the end and beats everybody else. Now somebody tells me that you, Randy Savage, have entered. Am I supposed to be scared? No, I'm not even shy about you, Randy. You see, I feel pretty safe about that. Chances are you getting your hands on me or winning that belt are like say sex, you know? Just doesn't happen. So abstain from the thought of winning the belt and abstain from the thought of touching me.
Both Roberts and Savage are a part of the titular event. Roberts enters at number 16, and once he was in, whenever the buzzer went off, he looked to see if Savage was the one charging down to the ring. He wouldn't have to wait too long as Savage enters at number 21, and he's obviously more concerned with getting his hands on Jake as opposed to winning this match, as he eliminates both Roberts and himself by yeeting both men over the top rope. The psychology is that getting at Roberts meant more to Savage than winning the title. Being able to defend his wife's honor means more than stroking his own ego by having another title reign. Our feud would continue and ultimately culminate a few weeks after the Rumble at Saturday night's Main Event 30, the Triple X edition. The Vin Diesel? Yeah. February 8th, 1992 saw... Yeah, Triple X Vin Diesel, right? Whatever. February 8th, 1992 saw 8,000 Texans fill the Lubbock Municipal Coliseum for a pay-per-view format that should be held as a standard for a 4 to 5 match show. Over 14 million are tuned in from their homes to witness Jake the Snake Roberts and Macho Man Randy Savage finally end their blood feud. They're the main event tonight, and deservedly so. Just over 5 minutes of an intense, high-impact, and somewhat bloody match unfolds. A more, quote, perfect version of this match is something maybe a little bit longer, if only by a few minutes, and definitely maybe a little bit bloodier given the stakes, but what we get is still incredibly strong. Savage is displaying little bits of nastiness himself, as now his emotions are sky high, and he's resorting to taking a few pages out of Jake's playbook. Macho is heated and crazed in all of his actions, but he tempers it with a level of cold sadism that seems to match the man he's fighting. So instead of just swinging wildly, Savage does little things like grabbing at Roberts' nose. He's twisting and grasping at the thing, clearly trying to break it. These actions do cause some of the red stuff to start flowing. He even complements this by scraping Roberts' face along the floor outside the ring, which is a spot that definitely needs to come back for rivalries such as this, because it sort of came out of left field for me upon rewatch, and it was a nice little addition. The referee tries to get between Savage and Roberts in the rope, so Robert goes for the eyes. Robert tosses Macho over the top rope multiple times, and Savage just crashes down each time. It's often forgotten that Randy Savage could sell like a mother, and that's on full display in this match. The finishing stretch that comes after the commercial break loses some of the heat of the first half. Roberts is in control, but doesn't bring the same viciousness and urgency that Savage does. Macho is definitely out for revenge, and Roberts might have bitten off more than he can chew. Savage hits the double axe handle to drive Roberts' throat into the guardrail, and it gets sold perfectly. Following this, Macho hits his patented elbow drop and gets the 1, 2, 3. Macho delivers a second elbow drop after the bell for good measure while Miss Elizabeth comes out to celebrate. Post-match, Roberts is helped backstage and is enraged that Savage hit him with an elbow drop after the bell. Jake grabs a steel chair and claims that he's going to crack the head open of whomever comes through that curtain first, whether or not it's Savage or Elizabeth. Jake doesn't care. He's livid. Of course, Elizabeth is the first one through the curtain, just as Roberts is about to take her head off. Undertaker, of all people, comes in for the save. Strangely enough, this is going to bring our feud to a somewhat of a whimpered ending. There's some innuendo that certain people were upset with the physicality surrounding Jake versus Elizabeth, so the feud is tidied up rather quickly. Post-feud, Jake would go on to feud with The Undertaker and become the second man to lose to Taker at WrestleMania. Meanwhile, Savage would feud with Ric Flair of the World's Heavyweight Championship, winning it from Flair the same WrestleMania as the Jake and Taker match. Personally, I would have loved to see the Jake and Macho feud continue further, but I would suggest that Roberts' perceived limitations by management is what held this feud back from continuing. It's somewhat easy to forget that Jake Roberts never held any title during his WWE tenure. Not just the World of Heavyweights, he didn't hold any title. Now, it just illustrates how magnetic of a character Jake the Snake was to have ascended into our cultural zeitgeist without having ever held the big gold one. A perfect example of how championships don't necessarily make a competitor, and having a cerebral opponent such as the Snake oftentimes led to more well thought out storylines due to not having the title dangled in front of his face. Although I would argue that Jake definitely could have deserved a title run at least one time. In another turn of events, both men would also be gone from the WWE within the next 18 months or so post-feud. Macho would go to WCW and ultimately join the NWO. Jake would leave for a cup of coffee in WCW before heading back to the WWE just in time to become the man on the receiving end of the now infamous Austin 316 promo. The feud between Macho Man and Jake the Snake is one of the most memorable and intense rivalries in the history of professional wrestling. The personal attacks from Roberts added a deeply personal dimension to their rivalry and intensified the animosity between the two. It showcased the power of storytelling and the ability of wrestlers to create compelling narratives that resonate with audiences. The combination of Savage's explosive personality and Roberts' psychological manipulation created a perfect storm of drama and excitement, leaving a lasting impact on the world of professional wrestling. Even decades later, fans still remember the intense battles and unforgettable moments that defined this feud. The psychological warfare conducted by Jake against Macho and Elizabeth was something that you would normally see from a sadistic movie villain, not a wrestling heel. Utilizing mind games, manipulation, and intimidation tactics to get inside Savage's head and gain a psychological advantage, Roberts tried everything in his arsenal to one-up the Macho Man, essentially attempting to have Macho beat himself. Overall, this is a perfect blend of athleticism, drama, and psychological warfare. It remains a standout example of how professional wrestling can create captivating narratives and engage fans on an emotional level. The intense storytelling and emotional investment from both wrestlers and fans have made it a benchmark for future years. A feud that will always be remembered as a classic rivalry that showcased the artistry and drama of professional wrestling. From their intense promos and interviews to their in-ring battles, Savage and Roberts created a legacy that continues to inspire and entertain fans to this day. To Jake the Snake Roberts, thank you so much. to Macho Man, no doubt snapping into a Slim Jim as he smiles down upon us. Thank you, Macho Man. Oh, yeah. God, such a terrible Macho Man impersonation. And with that, that brings us to the end of the rewind for the week. I want to thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you have a feud you'd like to hear rewound, or if you have any other comments, please feel free to reach me on the socials as Feud Rewind. And you can also hit me up at feudrewind@gmail.com. Fellow fan, I'm your host, Ben Zalance, and I'll roll it back with you next week with another feud to rewind.